People are frantically packing as Manitoba prepares to do something it's never done before. That plan to break a dike and deliberately flood a large swath of farmland is set to go ahead. It would happen right there in a place called Hoop and Holler Bend. The Prime Minister toured the area today. Officials have now restricted access inside that zone. But the CBC's Marissa Dragani got in earlier to get a first-hand look.
From the air, the scope of this crisis seems enormous. Prime Minister Stephen Harper went up to see it for himself today.
I think we're all worried about just making sure as many people stay dry as possible in the next couple of weeks.
But some will get wet. Officials are about to do the unimaginable, deliberately breach dikes and flood up to 150 homes to save hundreds and hundreds more. This is one of the homes that will get hit first.
Hi there, another TV crew.
Well, we could always do it with a hand, eh?
Eric Turco is doing anything and everything he can to save his 91-year-old father's house.
How much hope do you have that your house will be okay?
We're not actually that confident because water has a lot of power once it flows.
Many in the area are being ordered out before it happens. It's simply too dangerous. Danny Krekowicz is leaving behind a brand new house.
If this were an act of God, you take it as it is. But this is not an act of God. This is an act of government.
Krekowicz is just minutes away from where engineers will release the water.
This is where the dike breach is going to happen. This is the Assiniboine River. Crews are digging up a channel in the road, and they're going to fill up that channel with rocks and other materials so that when the water flows through, it will be gradual.
That's no comfort for Eric Turco.
Yeah, that's what it is. Everybody feels, well, you're being sacrificed, eh? That's what you've been doing, eh? Well,
And you're not angry?
would it help?
There's only one thing that would help him now, for water levels to dramatically decrease so officials can call off the dike breach, which could happen as early as tomorrow. Marissa Dragani, CBC News, Hoop and Holler Bend, Manitoba.
As we've mentioned, officials say 800 homes will be spared by flooding those 150. We want to give you some perspective on that. Here's the area that will be affected by the controlled dike breach tomorrow. Officials say an area twice that size would be hit by flooding if they don't go ahead with the plan. It's that entire zone shown in red. It encompasses at least 10 communities. Well, this year may be bad for flooding, but in southern Manitoba, flooding really is a fact of life. Here to talk about that now, the National Science correspondent Bob McDonald. What is it about this region?
Well, Peter, when I see these pictures of the flood area, I think about what that area looked like 11,500 years ago when it was a huge lake called Lake Agassiz. I have a map of the area that shows what that used to look like back just after the glaciers were disappearing. The blue area is what used to be this gigantic lake that covered most of Manitoba, parts of Saskatchewan, and even into Ontario. It has since drained north, but if we look at where the lakes and the rivers are that are flooding now on the next map, you'll see that it's the same area. And right in the center there, that's where Portage La Prairie is. And so these areas, when they flood, it doesn't take very much for it to flood because it's an old lake bottom. That's why it's so flat around that area. That's why it's so fertile and why we like to farm it. But it just takes a little bit of a rise to spread over that like spilled milk on a counter. But in fact, this has been going on for thousands of years. In fact, the area needs it. When rivers flood like that, they bring nutrients into the marshes and the wetlands that are on either side of it. The problem is we come along and say, well, I want to live beside the river or put my farm there. We build dikes and think we can control it. And that's where we're wrong because it is going to flood, especially after a La Nina year like this one with lots of snow.
Now, you know what the plan is for tomorrow in terms of the release. How effective do you think that'll be?
Well, the idea is to take the water and put it into another watershed so that it'll go south instead of north. We go back to the map that you showed at the beginning. It's to try to divert it down instead of having it go up so that, it won't affect more areas. The problem with this is that once you dig a hole in a dike, if you ever played around with sand, you try to hold water back, once the water starts going through, it has enormous erosive power and it can widen that gap. So their biggest challenge is going to be stopping the hole in the dike once they make it. But if they can do it in a controlled way, then hopefully they'll have a flood in one area and not in another. If it gets out of control, they'll have a new flood in an area they didn't expect.
All right, Bob, thanks very much.
Okay, Peter.
Bob McDonald.